Good morning, class. Welcome to this session. We are continuing with our topic on assessment tools. We are still looking at the 4 types of assessment tools. Previously, we discussed assessing tools with a test as an example of an assessing tool. But today, our focus is on 2 more tools, grading tools and recording tools. The first one is the grading tools. Under grading tools, we will look at 3 examples. One of them is the scoring rubric. This is not a new concept to you. We have looked at this before. We'll just look at a few more details on a scoring rubric. A scoring rubric is another way of evaluating learner performance. It has its own features, different from other assessing tools. So the scoring rubric has 3 main parts. It comes like a table with different parts, but from that table you have 3 main parts that should be of interest to us. So the first part that you may want to be familiar with is what is known as the performance criteria. And the second part is the scale, the rating scale, and the third part is the indicators part of that table. In terms of use of scoring rubric, you would remember that we discussed that when talking of assessment, you have 2 major types, objective assessment and subjective assessment. For objective, you remember we said once you have issued an assessment, the responses you get from the learners should be the same. That is, if that assessment is marked by me or someone else, someone different, they should all agree at one correct answer. So in other words, objective type of assessment, you have either a correct or a wrong answer. So with scoring rubric, this one is used for subjective assessment. And a good example is where you have given a learner an essay. Now, you'll be looking at different factors in that essay. So to assess them properly, maybe you may want to use a scoring rubric. An example of a scoring rubric has been given here. We will look at this example. Okay. So, like I already explained, you have 3 major parts. This top part, horizontal columns, then the vertical rows here, and these cells in the middle here. So the first part here, where it is written criteria 1, criteria 2, criteria 2, that's where you have the assessment items you want to assess in the learners. You could call them questions or something similar. You put them in this area. You could have 2 items, 3 items, 4 items, depending on what you want to assess in your learners. So that part is that one what we call the performance criteria section, the first part of a scoring rubric. Then the rating scale is that part on top. The rating scale, this part where you have 4 excellent, 3 good, 2 average, 1 needs support. Sometimes we put a percentage there, maybe 40%, 30%. That's the rating scale. And then the indicators will be put in this third part section of the scoring rubric. For example, you have an item on criteria 1, an item there, and that then has scored maybe a 40 also. If it is put there, that would be an indicator of the learner's achievement. So that's how a scoring rubric would look like. It will come in different forms. Some rubrics, you have the name of the learner on top. Maybe you put your class there, the learning area, and the name of the learner on top. That means this table is just for a learner. So you have different tables for each and every learner in your class. But also at times you may have a scoring rubric that does not have a name there on top. You could have names on one side of the rubric. So you have the question on top, the item on top, maybe just one item, or indicated on top. To what extent is the learner able to identify nouns in a sentence, in a paragraph? That would be our performance criteria. Then on the other side here, you have names of the learners. There will be other formats, but maybe for now, we need to familiarize ourselves with this type of rubric. Then, apart from the scoring rubric, you have another uh, tool for grading, the marking scheme. A marking scheme does not have those achievement levels. You have, say, a test with 20 items. Each item has its own marks. Now, the teacher will add up all the marks in the test to come up with a final score, which will later on converted into a grade. So that will be your marking scheme. Now, the marking scheme, unlike the scoring rubric, in most cases will be used for objective assessment. What is agriculture? You get almost a same answer from all your learners. If someone gives something different, they get it wrong. That's where you can use a marking scheme, objective assessment. Now, on the same grading tools, we have a third one, a checklist, an observation checklist to put it. This one also has items, performance criteria that you will need to use. It will have 4 sections, 4 parts. On one side, you have the items. Another column row, you have the a yes, no, and sometimes a comment on the far right hand side. You just tick. Is the learner able to write correctly in the straight lines? You just tick. Under yes, you just tick. Under no. So that would be an observation checklist. Now, an observation checklist can also be used for objective assessment. You administer the same set of questions to all your learners. Let's say you have 20 questions. So each and every learner will be subjected to the same 20 questions, just checking. John goes with the set of questions, Mary the same, Peter the same, and Eunice the same until you finish. All learners subjected to the same assessment items. And because of that, that's why it is said that this is another way of objectively appraising, assessing our learners. Now we go to the next type of assessment tools. These are the recording tools. And the type that we focus on now is first known as the attendance and performance register. This tool is where you record results of achievement, maybe scores from a test, scores from an observation checklist, or any tool that you have used. You have obtained the scores, then you record them in this tool, the attendance and performance register. It has to be updated. It has to be updated regularly. That means each and every time you administer a test, immediately update, record, or put the guess onto this register. But also, what you want to bear in mind that learners' grades are confidential, so they have to be kept something that is confidential. It has to be accessed easily by you, by other teachers as well, by school administrator, so that maybe in case you are not available, not around, someone wants to have an idea of how learners are performing, they should be able to access this with much ease. So keep it secure but accessible. Let others know where it is being kept, so that when you're not around, you access it and use it. So that's the recording uh, recording tool. Now, the two types of assessment that you may want to record in a that attendance and performance register. The two types of grades you want to record are the scores from continuous assessment, but also the other type is scores from formal assessment, summative assessment and formal assessment. And continuous assessment, mid-term test, weekend test. Grades from that activity have to be entered. Then end of term grades have to be entered. So you have two categories of grades to be put into that document. So both sets of grades, the continuous assessment activities and end of test and end of term, end of the year activities, you have to combine and get an average to record. They have both of them have to be used. They're important. They're important. Why is it important that learners' performance from continuous assessment end of term should be recorded? We have the following reasons. Okay. All right. We have the following reasons. Okay. If the learner knows that my continuous assessment is important, they work hard. If they know that it will contribute towards the end of term, end of year, final grade, they work hard. They'll take assessment within the term, within a week, seriously. Another importance, another advantage, it gives a true reflection of learner performance. It gives a true description of learner performance, because you're looking at the learner from the very first day of the school session to the very last day of the school session. You are not focusing only at how they have achieved at the end of the term, on how they have achieved at the end of the year. You look at them all along the term. So you get a true reflection of a learner's performance. At times, the learner may not do well in the end of term, end of year examination. So to compensate for that poor performance, you may bank on continuous assessment grades. Some may even fail to sit for end of term, end of year examinations. So you can rely on the results from continuous assessment. So it is really very, very important. Previously, it was only end of term that mattered, examination, end of year examination that mattered. But now people say no, let us look at their performance throughout the term. So it makes learners work hard in class. So how do we process grades? There are three ways of processing grades, depending on the level in which that learner is. Okay. So what it means is you have three phases, sections. In the infant section, all the learner's performance is taken as continuous. Mid-term test, weekend test, end of year, end of term test, the scores are put together, added, and you get an average. So you just record as continuous assessment. In the junior phase, standard